The cold wind howled outside the border post. Jace, a human patrol officer, sat inside the small station, sipping from a metal mug. He had been posted here for 3 long months, and nothing exciting ever happened. Most days were quiet, just long. Hours of scanning ID cards and watching snow pile up, but that night was different. Something was moving out there. Just beyond the outer sensor range, he noticed it on the screen first, a small shape, barely visible through the storm. At first, he thought it was just debris or a local animal. But then the alarm blinked, softly motion detected, approaching. The outer gate, Jace grabbed his jacket and rifle, stepping out into the freezing wind. The air was sharp like needles, and snowflakes hit his face like tiny blades. He walked toward the blinking red light on the fence, boots crunching over thick ice. That's when he saw her. She was small, maybe 5 feet tall, wrapped in torn fabric that barely covered her. Her skin was a soft shade of violet blue, glowing slightly under the white stormlight. Her long silver hair stuck to her face, and her legs trembled with each step. She looked up at him, eyes wide, glowing faintly purple in the darkness. "Hey," Jace called out, lowering his rifle. "Are you okay? Can you hear me?" She didn't respond. She just fell to her knees in the snow and held up her hands. Jace ran toward her, kneeling beside her. She was freezing. Skin cold like ice, lips barely moving. He leaned in closer to hear her whisper. Her voice was weak, trembling, almost broken. "Don't send me back," she said. Then she passed out. Jace lifted her carefully into his arms and rushed back to the station. He laid her on the medical cot, wrapped her in thermal blankets. Her breathing was shallow but steady. He placed a scanner near her neck, checking for identity or injuries. Unknown species, the scanner said. No ID match, but the wounds on her neck weren't from battle. They looked like restraints. Deep red lines like scars, as if a collar had been forced around her for a long time. Jace frowned. Something didn't feel right. She was too weak to have walked far. And this was restricted land. How did she even get here? Who was she running from? His commander would demand answers. Protocol said he should report immediately and hand her over, but something about her, something in the way she looked at him, stopped him. It wasn't fear in her eyes. It was something else, recognition, like she had seen his face before, curious and cautious. Jace activated the full DNA scan. The machine hummed softly, pulling a small sample from her wrist. Results would take an hour. He stared at the girl as she slept, wrapped tightly in layers of warmth. Despite her alien features, there was something familiar. She had small freckles near her eyes, just like his younger sister had when she was little. That was impossible. Of course, he shook the thought away, blaming the long hours and isolation. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't a stranger. Jace sat beside the cot, glancing at the screen every few minutes. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering every track she had left behind. Who was she? Why did she ask not to be sent back? And why did her eyes look like someone he once knew? The scanner beeped softly, green light flashing. Jace stood up slowly, eyes locked on the screen. The results loaded line by line, and as they appeared, his hands began to tremble. DNA match found. 51% compatibility. Source: human genetic. Relation: partial match. Shared ancestry confirmed. Jace stared at the screen. Frozen: 51%. That wasn't a coincidence. That was blood. His blood. The girl stirred slightly, letting out a soft breath. Jace took a step back, mind racing. Who was she? Really? Why did she share his DNA? And what did that mean for everything he thought he knew about his own life? He looked back at her, heart pounding. She wasn't just some random alien girl. She was connected to him in a way he didn't understand yet. And one thing was now certain: this night had changed everything. J stood frozen, staring at the screen. The DNA scan glowing softly in the dark room. The words felt impossible, like a glitch in the system. But the machine didn't lie. She wasn't just any girl. Not just another runaway alien crossing a border. She shared his DNA, more than half, like a sister. Or a daughter, but that couldn't be, could it? He had no children, and this was supposed to be a restricted zone. He took a shaky breath and looked at the girl lying on the cot. She was breathing steadily now, but her body was still cold, still weak. The faint light from the heater shimmered on her skin, revealing more bruises along her arms. Someone had hurt her, maybe badly. And yet she had made it this far just to reach this post. She could have died out there if he hadn't noticed her signal. Jace leaned closer and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Her eyes opened slowly, and for a moment she looked confused. Then afraid. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now." She blinked, her lips dry, her voice barely louder than a breath. "You scanned me," she whispered. Jace nodded, trying to find the right words. "Why do you have my DNA?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. The girl looked away, her eyes welling up with tears. "They told me I was made," she said, "not born." Jace's heart sank. "Made?" he asked. "By who?" "I don't know," she answered. "The people. In white suits, the ones in the deep labs." She coughed and held her side in pain. "They said. They said I was created from human strands. Someone special. Someone from the old Earth records." Jace stepped back slowly. His breath caught in his throat. "Special," she had said. And he knew his own records had been taken years ago when he joined the force. The military had access, the science division, too. He never thought someone would actually use them. He walked to the door and locked it manually. Then turned off the live security feed. If anyone found out what he had just learned, this girl would be taken and never seen again. She might be a clone, a test subject, maybe something else. But right now, she was a person, and she was scared. "Do you remember anything else?" he asked. Returning to her side, she nodded slowly, wiping her tears with a shaky hand. "I remember a room full of glass tanks with lights everywhere," she said. "There were others like me. Some older, some younger, but they were always quiet, always still." Jace felt a chill run through his body. "What happened to them?" he asked, almost afraid of the answer. "They disappeared," she said, "one by one." There was silence in the room, only the soft hum of the heater. And the wind outside. Jace sat down beside her and looked into her eyes. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then spoke. "They called me Yana." He repeated it softly. "Yana." It felt strange on his tongue, but it also felt right. "Yana," he said again. "I won't let them take you back." Her eyes widened, filled with both relief and fear. "But they'll come," she said. "They always come." "Then we'll leave first," Jace said firmly. She looked at him, uncertain. "Where would we go?" "Anywhere," he replied. "Somewhere warm, somewhere safe, far from their reach." Yana stared at him like she was trying to believe his words. "You don't even know what I am?" she said. Jace stood and pulled out a small bag, stuffing a few essentials inside. "You're someone who came to me for help," he said. "That's enough." He moved quickly, checking cameras and disabling the backup signals. He had maybe an hour before his absence triggered a report. Yana struggled to sit up, and he helped her gently to her feet. She leaned against him, weak but determined, as they stepped out into the snow again. Yana looked up at the sky. "The stars used to scare me," she whispered. "Now they feel like hope." Jace didn't say anything, but he held her closer. He had no idea what they were running from or where they were heading, but one thing was now clear. This girl was tied to him in a way he never imagined. And he would not let her be taken again, not while he still had breath in his lungs. The desert winds screamed across the loading deck as the small smuggler ship lifted off from the icy border post. Inside the cramped cargo hold, Jace tightened the straps around Yana's blanket-covered shoulders. She was still weak, her skin pale, and shaking from fever, but her eyes never left his face. Neither of them spoke for a while. The silence louder than the rumbling engines around them. The pilot, a three-armed alien named Vark, grunted from the cockpit. "You better be right about this girl, human." I don't need military dogs sniffing my tail." Jace didn't answer. His focus locked on Yana, who now sat beside a storage crate, holding her knees close. She didn't cry. Not anymore, but something about the way she sat felt hollow, like a child abandoned too many times. The smell of engine oil, sweat, and metal filled the air as the ship shot into orbit. They weren't safe yet, not even close. 3 hours later, the ship landed on a dust-covered moon called Ralvec 7. Forgotten mining world with more shadows than people. Jace helped Yana down the ramp, his arm steadying her small frame. They walked past broken robots, flickering lamps, and a handful of silent faces watching from alleys. No one asked questions here, not unless they wanted trouble. That's why Jace brought her here. This place didn't care who you were, just how much you could pay. He found an old Manek hidden behind a rusted shop sign. The woman, a half-cybernetic doctor with glowing red eyes, raised an eyebrow at them. "She's not bleeding, but her brain looks like it's trying to scream," she said after a quick scan. Jace nodded. "Can you help her?" "I can try," the doctor replied, "but you won't like what I find." The procedure took nearly an hour. Yana lay still on a metal table while the medic connected small wires to her scalp. Jace stood nearby, fists clenched, watching every move. Finally, the doctor sighed and pulled the scanner away. "She's been tampered with," she said. "Heavy neural locks, maybe 5 or 6. "Locks?" Jace asked. "Memory barriers," the doctor explained. "They've blocked parts of her mind, like closing doors in a hallway." Yana blinked slowly, confusion in her voice. I see shadows sometimes, but no faces." The medic turned to Jace. "If you want me to open those doors, she may not like what's behind them." Jace looked at Yana, saw the fear in her eyes, and nodded. "Do it." When the final lock was released, Yana screamed. She grabbed her head, tears rolling down her cheeks, her voice shaking the walls. Jace rushed to her side, holding her tightly, whispering her name again and again. Her breathing slowed, and her hands finally dropped too. "Her lap, I remember," she said quietly. "I remember them all. The others?" Jace asked. She nodded. "There were more like me, but they didn't survive. They were erased." She stared at the floor, then added, "They used your DNA to make us. But I was the only one who lived." Jace felt like the air had been knocked from his chest. "They said you were a hero," Yana continued. "They told me stories of the donor, the human with perfect compatibility. They built me from your blood, Jace. I wasn't supposed to escape, but I did." He couldn't speak, couldn't think, only hold her tighter. In the silence, the truth wrapped around them like a heavy blanket. She wasn't just part of him. She was created from him, and now someone out there wanted her back because she wasn't just rare. She was proof. The medic wiped her hands and turned off the scanner. "You've made enemies now," she said. "The kind that don't forgive." Jace looked at her, eyes hard. "Then we'll disappear." The doctor handed him a small chip. "This has coordinates. Deep system, off-grid. You'll find someone there who can hide you, for a price." Yana stood slowly, still shaking, but stronger than before, as they walked out into the dusty night. The sky above them burned with stars. Yana reached for Jace's hand and held it tightly. "They called me a failure," she said, "but I found you." Jace squeezed her hand. "You're not a failure, Yana. Your family?" Yana sat by the window of the old cargo room, watching passed slowly in the dark. The ship they had boarded wasn't fast, but it was hidden, low-tracked, and perfect for running. Jace sat across from her, checking the small holomap and the coordinates given by the rogue medic. He hadn't spoken much since they left Ralvec 7, but his eyes showed everything: worry, fear, guilt. Yana didn't blame him. He hadn't created her, not really, but part of him was inside her, woven into her bones and blood. And now both of them were hunted because of it. The cargo captain, short, thick-scaled alien named Harn, entered with a growl. "Gotta ping Jace," he said. A bounty scan was pushed system-wide. They want the girl alive, but they're not saying why. Jace's heart sank. "How close?" "Too close," Harn said. "You've got maybe 2 jumps before the patrol starts smelling your wake." Jace turned to Yana, who was still staring at the stars. "They won't stop, will they?" she asked softly. "No," he said, "but neither will we." They reached the hiding system late the next cycle. A black zone called Nolar's Grave, where wrecked ships floated like forgotten ghosts. Dead satellites, burnt engines, and cracked hulls drifted slowly in silence. Jace had never been there before, but he'd heard stories: smugglers, exiles, broken soldiers. This was where people went when they no longer existed. The ship slowed as it entered the zone. Pushing between rusted metal and silence, Yana stood behind Jace, her hand resting on the wall for balance. She stared at the broken ships, eyes wide with something between fear and wonder. "This place feels like me," she whispered. "Like something thrown away." Jace looked at her and shook his head. "No, not thrown away. Just not understood. The base they were looking for wasn't on any map. It was a hollowed-out cargo freighter, old military class, now turned into a hidden outpost. They docked quietly, no questions asked, no names spoken. Inside, lights flickered low, and thick steam floated in the air from leaking vents. People watched them, but said nothing. Some wore armor, others wore scars. Everyone looked like they had nothing left to lose. An old man with metal arms approached, his voice slow and dry. "You brought her here?" he asked Jace. "Yes," Jace replied, standing firm. "You know who's chasing her?" "I don't care." The man grinned with broken teeth. "Good answer." He turned to Yana and nodded. "We don't judge what you are here, girl. Just what you do next." That night, Yana couldn't sleep. The lights were dim, the air heavy with heat and engine oil. She sat on the floor, holding a piece of scrap metal, her hands tracing patterns into it like muscle memory. Jace watched her quietly. "From the bunk, you used to build things?" he asked. She nodded. "In the lab, they said I had focus. They didn't teach me. I just knew." She showed him the PSAN energy stabilizer, perfectly shaped, from parts she found in the hallway. Jace took it in his hands and smiled. "You're more than what they made." She leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. "I don't want to be what they made at all." The next morning, they were awakened by alarms. Someone had slipped a tracker into their ship back on Ralvec 7. Small scout vessel had entered the grave, broadcasting a false signal. It didn't take long to realize they weren't alone anymore. The syndicate had followed the trail, and they were close. Jace grabbed his weapon, heart pounding. Yana stood beside him, no fear in her face this time, only something sharper purpose. She turned to him, her voice calm. "If they find me, they'll try to take me alive," she said, "but I won't go back." "I know," he said, gripping her hand. "We won't let them." The station lights flickered, and the hallway lights dimmed. The enemy was coming, but this time, Yana wasn't running. She was ready to fight. The station air grew still, heavy like the quiet before a storm. Jace pressed his ear against the cold metal wall, hearing faint sounds, footsteps. Careful and slow, whoever was coming knew this place well. or at least believed they did. Yana stood behind him, holding a short pulse rod that she found in the mechanic's bay. It wasn't much, but in her hands it hummed with focus. The lights flickered again, then shut off completely. Emergency red strips blinked to life, casting long shadows through the hallway. Voices whispered from behind the pipes, low, out. Coded language Jace had only heard once during Black Ops training. They weren't normal hunters. These were cleaners, silent, fast, and trained to remove evidence, not rescue it. Jace motioned for Yana to stay low as he moved toward the corner. She didn't listen. Instead, she stepped forward, one foot steady in front of the other, her eyes glowing faintly violet. Her voice came out calm but strange. They are using an old signal array from Sector E3. It's pulling heat from our vents. Jace turned, confused. How do you know that? I don't know, she said, her head tilting slightly. I just feel it. Before he could ask more, a sharp metallic clang echoed through the corridor. The enemy had breached the lower hull, and soon they'd rise floor by floor. Jace made a choice without thinking. He grabbed Yana's hand and pulled her toward the elevator shaft. No stairs, he said. Too exposed. She nodded and followed without hesitation. They slid down the emergency cable, landing hard on the engineering deck below. Steam hissed from broken valves and sparks danced across the floor. A low rumble vibrated through the ground. It wasn't just the cleaners anymore. Another ship had arrived outside, a heavy one, likely their extraction point. Yana stumbled but caught herself, her hand touching a control panel. Then she paused, eyes locking onto the screen. There's something down here, she whispered. Something. Sleeping, Jace frowned. What do you mean sleeping? She didn't answer. Instead, she walked deeper into the hallway, following a strange hum only she could hear. It led them to a locked door marked with faded military letters. Reactor. Oh, Beta Core, Jace hesitated. We shouldn't, but the door hissed open on its own. Inside was a massive room filled with tubes, old servers, and one large glass chamber in the center. Floating in that chamber was a shape humanoid, pale, covered in strange lines and wires. Yana stepped closer, her hand touching the glass gently. This was one of them, she said, voice cracking, one of the early versions. She reached up and wiped away dust, revealing a face too similar to her own. Jace's stomach twisted. They made more of you, he said quietly. They made too many, she replied. But none survived the merge except me. Suddenly, the lights in the room turned bright. White, a voice echoed from hidden speakers, cold and mechanical. Subject 47 has been located. Prepare containment. Yana backed away from the chamber as mechanical arms dropped from the ceiling. Jace raised his weapon and fired at the control panel. Sparks flying everywhere. The alarm screamed, but the power dropped seconds later. She had pulled the breaker. They ran, sprinting down side tunnels and through forgotten storage rooms. The whole station was waking up now. Lights flashing, doors locking, voices shouting. They found a side hangar, one with a single small shuttle inside. Dusty, but still functional, Jace jumped into the pilot's seat, activating the old systems while Yana secured the rear hatch. The engines roared just as a group of masked soldiers appeared at the door. They opened fire, bullets sparking against the ship's hull. Yana screamed, pulling the lever to seal the door just as one shot scraped her arm. Jace launched them into the void, metal groaning, shields failing, but they made it out. As the stars returned outside the window, and the broken station faded behind them, Yana slumped into a seat, clutching her arm. You okay? Jace asked. I think I remembered more, she whispered. What? There's another lab, she said. A bigger one, hidden deep inside a gas giant. And that's where they're making something worse. Jace looked at her, blood on her arm, dust in her hair. But in her eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen before. Not fear, not confusion, but fire. And he knew this wasn't just about escape anymore. It was war. The gas giant loomed in front of them like a sleeping god. Orange and red storms spun endlessly across its surface. Jace stared at the swirling clouds from the shuttle's window. Somewhere inside that endless storm, a secret lab was hiding. And inside that lab, the people who made Yana were doing it again. Yana sat on the floor of the ship, her knees pulled to her chest. Her wounded arm was wrapped tightly. But the pain wasn't from the injury. It was from the memories, the ones that kept waking up inside. Her mind, each one sharper than the last, each one filled with cold rooms, bright lights, and whispers behind glass. She remembered floating in a tank, wires in her skin, voices calling her subject. Not her name. She remembered others small, like her crying, shaking, then going silent. All of them made from someone else's DNA, but none of them lived. Jace walked over and sat beside her. The silence stretching between them, she didn't speak, just leaned her head on his shoulder. He placed a hand gently over hers. "Will end this," he said. "No matter what's down there." Yana nodded slowly. "I know where to go," she whispered. They couldn't land directly, not on a gas giant. But Yana remembered a hidden entrance through a gravity shell, disguised port floating inside the upper atmosphere, invisible to most scans. The coordinates weren't on any chart, but she knew them. They flew through electrical storms, dodged pressure spikes, and finally reached a silent ring of metal floating inside the clouds. Jace aligned the shuttle and docked it with care. The moment they stepped out, the air changed. It wasn't cold or warm, just sterile, like the breath of something lifeless. The hallway was quiet, the walls smooth and silver with no signs or doors. Yana led the way, her footsteps sure, like her body remembered the path even when her mind didn't. They reached a thick door with no lock, no handle. Yana placed her hand on the wall beside it. It scanned her palm and opened silently. Inside was darkness wide, empty space filled with tall capsules and dim lights. The lab, hidden for years, was still running. Jace moved carefully between the glass pods, reading the displays. Inside each one floated a shape, not quite human, not quite alien. Their faces were blank, their limbs thin and unfinished. Some were twitching, others perfectly still. "What are these?" Jace asked. Yana stepped closer, her face pale. "They're not done yet," she said. "They're waiting for the merge." Suddenly, a voice echoed across the room, cold and familiar. "I never expected you to return." Subject 47, A. Tall figure stepped out from the shadows. He wore a black lab coat, his face lined with age, but his eyes sharp like needles. "You were the only one who worked," he said, "but you weren't ready. Not emotionally stable. You ran, and now look at you, covered in blood." Trembling in front of your creator, Jace raised his weapon, aiming it at the man's chest, but the scientist only smiled. "You won't shoot, soldier," he said. "Not when I tell you the truth." He turned to Yana. "You weren't just made from his DNA, girl. You were designed with one purpose: to bond with him, to grow near him, respond to his presence, and unlock your full potential. You are a weapon of perfect emotional sync." Yana shook her head slowly. "That's not true." But her body was shaking now, her breath coming fast. He took a step closer. "It is, and you feel it, don't you? The anger, the protection, the fear, it all rises when he's in danger." "It's your programming," Jace fired. One clean shot that hit the metal floor near the man's feet. "Say another word, and I'll make sure you never speak again." The man backed away, his hands raised, but behind him, a red light began blinking. Jace looked at Yana. "What's that?" She whispered. "They're waking up the new generation." The pods started glowing, one by one, inside. The half-formed clones began moving. Jace turned to Yana. "Can you stop it?" She hesitated, eyes locked on the control panel above the chamber. If I override the system, the shockwave might kill them all, she said. But if we don't, they'll release the next wave. Jace didn't speak. He only placed her hand on the control. It's your choice, Yana, he said. They made you, but you decide who you are. She closed her eyes, breathed in slowly, and pressed her palm to the screen. The room filled with a deep hum. Lights cracked, wires sparked, and the machines began to fail. One by one, the pods shut down, systems crashing beyond repair. Yana fell to her knees as the last light blinked out. The lab was dying, and with it, the twisted dreams of her creators. Jace lifted her gently, holding her close as alarms echoed through the structure. They had to leave now, but something had changed inside her. This wasn't fear anymore. It was freedom. The lab burned behind them as the old structure began to collapse. Fire licked through the steel floors, smoke coiling up into the gas giant's thick clouds. Jace carried Yana across the narrow maintenance bridge toward the shuttle. Her eyes were open, but she was silent, as if her mind was somewhere far away. The override had shut down the cloning chambers, but it had also triggered the reactor. They had minutes left, maybe less. Jace's boots slipped once on the grated floor, but he held her tight. She didn't weigh much, but she felt heavier now, like her soul had grown inside the shuttle. The power flickered to life, the engine whining as it charged. Jace strapped her in gently, then ran to the cockpit, fingers flying over controls. Behind them, the base groaned, and cracked alarms blaring louder. Just as the floor gave way behind the ship, they launched. The shuttle shot upward into thick clouds, shaking with turbulence and heat. Yana blinked, reaching toward the window, her voice a whisper. It's over. Jace looked at her, sweat on his forehead, eyes tired. No, he said. It's just beginning. Back in open space, silence returned, broken only by the hum of the ship. They didn't speak for a long time, just sat beside each other. Yana stared out at the stars, her reflection barely visible on the glass. She didn't look like a test subject anymore. She looked alive, not perfect, not finished, but real. They landed weeks later on a quiet moon with blue skies and thick green trees. A place no one visited, not tracked by any galactic map. Jace built a small home using scrap and old parts from the shuttle. It wasn't much, but it was safe, and it was theirs. Yana helped, day by day. Her hands growing stronger, she learned to plant things, fix broken wires, cook real food. Every time she laughed, it felt like a miracle. She still had memories of the lab, dark, sharp, cold, but they faded with each sunrise. She had dreams now. Some were about space, some about family, and some just about peace. Jace never asked her what she wanted to be. He never called her daughter or clone or soldier. He just called her Yana, and to her, that was more than enough. One evening, as the stars lit the sky above the quiet valley, Yana sat beside the fire, her eyes on the flames. Do you think I'm real? She asked softly. Jace looked at her, then nodded. You're real because you chose to live, he said, not because of what made you. She smiled, a small, warm smile that reached her eyes. And you? She asked, why did you stay? He didn't answer right away. Then he said, because I couldn't walk away from someone who needed to be saved. But you saved me too, she replied. In that quiet moment, under the stars, nothing else mattered, not the past, not the lab, not the war, only the present, a human and an alien girl. Both broken in different ways, but together they had become something whole, and far above them the stars kept shining. Not for science, not for war, but for them,